I call the Honourable Member Louisa Wall. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa, kei te tautoko te wiki te reo Māori. Ngā mihi kia koe whaia Georgina Te Hiauhiau. I want to acknowledge the Minister isn't in the House, and I want to pay a tribute to her.
Sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt the Honourable Member, and I realise that she hasn't been here too long, but it's not appropriate to indicate an absence of a member of the House. We are all absent from the House at times.
Mr Speaker, I want to pay my respect to the Minister who is responsible for the Courts and Criminal Matters Bill. This is the first contribution that I have had to make to this debate, and it is certainly a pleasure to do so. In doing so, I would like to acknowledge my colleague, the Honourable Rick Barker, for his obvious contribution to the development of this bill, and obviously to a point where we are at today. So this particular bill presents the most comprehensive set of legislative improvements for the recovery of unpaid fines, reparation and civil debt in 12 years. It addresses a number of issues, including a general concern about the levels of overdue fines. And I was just really interested. I have only been in the House for 3 months, and I do note that I am sort of in the infancy of my political career. But when this bill was first read on the 19th of May 2010, thank you, the fine total was $778 million. On the 16th of November 2010, when we had the second reading, it was $711 million, and I'm not sure why, but it's trending down regardless of the passage of this bill. So there seemed to be a bit of a difference between what Minister Power said the current outstanding total was, which was $666.5 million, but I think Jonathan said it was $672 million, but it's very interesting that, the fines are trending down. So obviously the people responsible for collecting fines are doing a tremendous job. What I do want to focus on actually is one of the particular major policy initiatives in this bill, which is to introduce driver licence stop orders that I do want to highlight. Was approved and was ready to go in July 2008. But through an amendment to the Land Transport Act 1998, contained in Part 2 of this bill, there will be an enforcement measure that will allow fines defaulters' driver's licence to be suspended when the defaulter fails to maintain payment of outstanding traffic fines. The licence will remain suspended until the defaulter pays the overdue fines or enters into an arrangement to pay the monies owed. Traffic offences make up approximately 99% of all infringements filed in the court each year for collection. The driver licence stop order has proved to be very effective sanction in Australia and Canadian jurisdictions. And so I note from previous kōrero on this bill that there's an estimated 50% of fine defaulters who pay or enter into a payment deferral arrangement, with another 25% doing so when their licences have been suspended. So this measure will create an effective, simple but powerful incentive for people to resolve their fines. But in reviewing what has been said about this bill previously, I actually want to pick up on points that Dr Kennedy Graham made, and I note he's no longer with us, but he did contribute earlier. And he indicated, or there are indications, that young people have difficulty in paying their fines, presumably in part because of their lower incomes. So, Mr Speaker, I found it really interesting that from June 2008 statistics that over 500,000 individuals, about 16% of all Kiwis over 15 years of age, owe fines. This is 1 in 6. Now, I think that's of particular concern because this bill is obviously going to affect our young people. And I do note that the Honourable Rick Barker was addressing this issue, but this Courts and Criminal Matters Bill makes no attempt to do so. So we propose to bring young people with large amounts of fines within a case management system. This would ensure there was some face-to-face engagement as opposed to liable persons just being sent a warning notice, giving them 14 days to resolve the issue with the fines authority before their licence is suspended. I actually think this is hugely relevant. Holding people accountable is a great principle that we all should have, and actually we need it for society to function. But making young people take responsibility, forcing this sort of responsibility on them, I think is going to have some consequences that actually may affect their ability, particularly within the employment sphere. So within the whare that I live in, that I share with my partner, we have two young people. We have a young person who's studying and at university, and we have a young person who is working. Now that young person who's working, he actually needs his vehicle to get to work. And I think that for both of them, actually, there may be a time where they do incur a fine. Now, obviously, we would all like to think that our young people aren't going to break the law and incur fines, but they do. The reality is that they do, and their statistics prove that they do. And I think that there could be some unforeseen consequences, because we already know, particularly if we look at the Māori statistics, that 35% of young Māori are what we call NEET. So they're not engaged in employment, educational training, but I'm sure many of them still drive vehicles. And you've got to say that it's very difficult for them to be able to gain employment. And obviously for those who do have employment, the consequences of losing their vehicle could be quite extreme and have a profound impact on the ability to participate in society. So from our perspective, a case management approach is appropriate, because I think our young people need guidance. I think they need to be supported. And actually, if you look at the Prime Minister's Science Advisor, Sir Peter Gluckman, when in his recently released report, there are a number of competing factors and competing societal norms that actually make it really difficult for our young people to take responsibility. They actually need society, they need parents, they need communities, they need people who are there to help and support them to be responsible. And I actually do have a particular concern that our case management approach that was proposed, I guess, was deemed to be inappropriate, was deemed to not be or merit or warrant actual inclusion in the bill. So, as I said before, in an ideal world, our young people would not get fined, but the reality is they do, and it will be interesting to track the impact of this particular piece of legislation, and specifically on our young people. I do want to highlight the two other major policy proposals in this bill, and one is credit reporting. And so through this system, private sector lending companies and others will be able to find out if someone has overdue penalties. This will encourage people to pay fines and will make them accountable for the money they owe. It also means that the Ministry of Justice can use information stored by credit reporting agencies to collect fines. This system will affect people who can afford to pay fines but choose not to because they have not previously faced any serious consequences for not paying. And finally, I just want to highlight the third major initiative, which is a super priority, which was contained in Part 3. And this tool will ensure that the court has priority over secured party for the sale of proceeds of seized goods where the amount of overdue fines was or could have been disclosed by the formal credit report by the Ministry. I am now a permanent member on the Law and Order Select Committee. I wasn't on the Law and Order Select Committee when they heard this bill, but I do want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the process, so acknowledge the chair of that Select Committee and the members of that Select Committee. I've recently sat through some processes in terms of the process that Select Committees have to go through in ensuring that New Zealanders have a say Based on some of the kōrero that my colleague Raymond Ho talked about earlier, there was interest in this bill and great interest. And so I just want to congratulate all those people that were involved in bringing the bill to where it is today. I look forward to contributions from other members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Dr. Cam Calder.